Hey everyone, I'm John.
And I'm John.
And we're Flippin Good.
Thank you for checking out our first full-length episode. On today's video, we're gonna be gutting a 1,400 square foot house all the way down to the studs. And then we're gonna build it back better than it's ever been.
This house has had a lot done to it. We tore it all apart to find out what was actually wrong with it. And we can't wait for you guys to join us as we dive into this house and make it so much better.
Yeah, so thanks for checking out the first episode of Flippin Good. So this house is in Battle Creek, Michigan. It's about a mile from City Hall and just up the road actually from Battle Creek, which is kind of cool. The house was built in 1915, so it's really old, and we wanted to try to keep some of that old style to it while modernizing it. It was originally listed for $50,000, and after a little negotiating, we were able to get it for $42,000.
When we got this house, it came with two very leaking spots in the roof. And when I say leaking, we're talking holes that were about this big. The little pools that were sitting underneath the roof little kiddie pools that somebody had shoved in the roof, didn't really work. It was just a problem waiting to expand.
The water had overflowed all throughout the house and caused water damage and on parts of the structure. And we knew that if we wanted to do any of the work on the inside, we needed to get those holes plugged and get that roof finished.
The roof is very, very steep. And yeah. I don't know about you, but I was like, not so sure about this.
And it was winter time.
It was winter time.
So part of the roof was covered in snow and ice, and trying to get up there in the winter with freezing rain and stuff happening, it was not ideal.
Yeah, between John and I, we've done roofs before. Nothing commercially, nothing professionally, but helping family members out just to redo their own roofs. I think we'd say we've got the baseline knowledge for doing it.
Yeah, and the roof, it had its 3 layers of shingles, its original cedar shake wood shingles, and then 2 layers of asphalt shingles on top of that. And underneath that, there was no decking, which is the plywood that the shingles and underlayment normally get fastened to. And so we knew we were gonna have to tear off 3 layers of shingles, then deck it, and then do the rest of the steps of roofing. So it was a really big undertaking.
Absolutely. Naturally, what we did was we went out and got some quotes.
Yeah, the first quote, they wanted $29,000 to do the roof, and the next quote was $22,000 or something.
Way out of our budget.
Yeah, so we knew we were gonna have to do it ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's with most people who are looking at doing properties and flipping properties, that's kind of a pretty important piece of where can you save money where it matters, where can you just do it yourself? And I think on this situation, the cost of redoing the roof didn't make sense to pay out somebody to do it.
Right.
So we tackled it. And it took us a little bit of time.
Yeah, and we kind of had to wait until the weather permitted us to go back up there. And it was a little bit easier once the ice started melting, that's for sure.
Which also created another problem. We have an open hole in the roof, which water's just flowing inside. So a little bit of tarping helped out, pushing the project back a little bit, but also making it a safe environment for us to be in. How long did it take us, and what was the total cost we ended up with that?
We started it in February. We didn't finish it until the weather cleared up a little bit, which was April. So it took a little bit of time, and that was just working on it on the weekends. But we got it done, and we came in way under the professional estimates. So the total cost for us to do the roof ourselves was about $7,000.
Which isn't too terrible, and it kept us right on track with where we wanted to be in the total cost we estimated for the flip.
Next, we started to demo the front porch a little bit because the curb appeal here was in desperate need of a redesign, but more on that later.
The entire house was covered in fake brick. It was a particle board brick that was just in really, really bad shape.
We knew we were gonna tear it off and want to redo the exterior and make it really pop.
Probably one of the best decisions we made in the curb appeal of the house.
And then we moved on to shoring up the balcony. The balcony is one of my favorite features of the house, maybe my favorite feature. And it was a little bit sketchy when we first got here. There was not very much structural integrity. And so we knew we were going to have to address that. We were going to have to replace some of the boards that were rotting. We were going to have to redeck it. And we ended up choosing a rubber membrane surface to finish it off. After resurfacing the balcony, we were ready to prep the exterior of the house for painting. Prepping the exterior, it just involved power washing it. After we removed the fake brick siding, the wood siding that was underneath was pretty dirty.
Very dirty.
Yeah, so we power washed and just made it all nice and clean so that when we did paint, everything would lay on the way it's supposed to. We tinted the primer the same color that we were painting with. That way we would get really good full coverage.
Yeah, it kept that consistency and it allowed everything to adhere and really build a strong base for the actual final coat of paint.
Also, the paint sprayer was a must for this project. I cannot imagine having to brush or roll the entire exterior of this house.
100%. That was a game changer. All in all, the paint project, the exterior paint project, cost about $1,000.
So all of this exterior work was going on the weekends when we were able to get out here together. So in between that, I had started making a little bit of progress inside the house. I started tearing out the walls because we knew that the house was gonna need all new electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and there was just no way we were gonna be able to do that with the walls in place.
Because this house was built in 1915, all of the walls were coated with lath and plaster. And lath and plaster is just wood slats that plaster was pressed up and into and kind of hooked on. There was horsehair, actual horsehair, mixed into the mixture. And that created a smooth, solid surface that the walls were formed with. Tons and tons of debris to get out when we did that project. At the time when this house was built, there was no insulation, and so the house was very warm in the summertime and very cold and drafty in the wintertime, which doesn't make for a good environment for the next owner. And so one of the things we really prioritized was not only comfort, but also safety of the house over the profits. And so you'll see that in our numbers as we go through, but it was really one of those high priority pieces because we want something to be a very good product at the end.
With the exterior walls painted and the interior walls removed, we were ready to move on to the next big project, windows.
Yeah, windows were a huge project, almost as big as the roof.
As far as we could tell, the house still had all of its original windows, which means they were really old, they weren't very energy efficient. Some of the windows in the back sunroom in particular were just broken. And we did not want to replace all of those because it's just two walls of just windows. So we actually just repaired those ones. And we were able to save a little bit of money that way.
Yeah, but the majority of the house needed new glass.
Yeah.
And one of the nice things about replacing the glass was it made it so that way the house would actually heat and cool properly, but also like it would be functional.
Yeah, and some of the windows we had to custom order, which we didn't mind because we did have to pay a little more and we did have to wait a little longer to get them. But the house had a lot of natural light coming in from the big windows that they had already. And we didn't want to lose that. We wanted to keep that and just make sure that it was being flooded with all of that same natural light.
Yeah, the front window in the living room was very difficult to come up with. And we originally were looking at getting 3 individual windows like it had, but for a couple $100 more, we could get a very big window which gave more light and was just as functional, but from the curb appeal, it looked really good.
So we were a little nervous with the big window because if we got it from the store and it had a crack in it, we were gonna have to wait again. And if you get it to the house and you try to install it, and you drop it, or one wrong move, and now you're out your window and you're waiting again for it to come back in, and we didn't want to deal with any of that. So we had someone come out and help us to make sure that we had enough manpower to get this thing installed the right way, no issues, and it worked out really well. We also were able to save some money by making our own custom window trim. So we just took a 4x8 sheet of PVC and we ripped it down to the sizes that we wanted with a table saw. And then that gave us all sorts of flexibility on trimming out our windows and also saved us some money.
Yeah, I would say that just doing the window trim alone, we saved about $2,000. And then replacing the windows ourselves, how much would you say that saved us?
So we didn't actually get a quote for windows, but our estimation is that they would have probably cost us maybe $30,000 or even more to have it done by professionals. And for us to do it ourselves, it cost us about $7,300.
One of the downsides to power washing was the cedar shake siding was very, very brittle. And so as we power washed, those shakes siding, it
didn't survive.
It didn't survive. It was just crumbling, which is a good thing to find out now versus down the road.
So we picked out some vinyl siding that looks like the same wood shake style to replace that. And we took that and matched the color, and that's the color that we ended up using to paint the exterior.
It allowed the house to keep a lot of its original look, but yet also be able to handle the longevity of the house. Once we got the windows installed, we were able to install the vinyl shake siding. It was a little bit of a tricky situation just because of setting up the roof jacks and getting up to that top peak of the roof. But we had to go in that order because the siding tucks behind the actual window. We wanted it to look clean and actually be sealed up from the weather.
And the total cost of the shake siding was about $800.
Once we finished the siding, we jumped into the project of the front porch. The front porch had a lot of broken boards.
A lot of rotting wood, and it just was not very safe.
So we dove in and tore the decking off of the porch, replaced all of the boards, and also shored up the deck so that way it could actually support the roof above.
Right, and this was all going towards the safety of it and the functionality of it, but also curb appeal.
Curb appeal was really important. This was probably one of my favorite pieces of this project because walking up to the house, bushes that covered the house were like the biggest cringe factor for me. I was so excited to get those bushes ripped out so that way people could actually see the house.
The total cost of resurfacing the deck and replacing the columns and putting on the railing was about $1,830. After finishing up the porch, we finally got around to finishing up the roofs once and for all. So we added the soffit vents and we put some tar around the flashing at the chimney, and then we removed the tethers and the roof jacks.
Yeah, the soffit vents alone, that was a really important piece to this roof to make sure that it's going to last the lifetime of the shingles. There was no airflow originally in that attic space to allow the roof to breathe. So by putting in the soffit vents, it made it so that way air could flow inside and actually keep the roof in its best shape it could be for the life of the shingles. John and I have done gutters in the past, and doing gutters is not one of those things where it's that enjoyable.
No.
Also, we don't have the equipment to do seamless gutters. One of the things that we did was we got a quote for getting gutters done, and when they came in with their quote, it was about $1,500.
Yeah.
Which was perfect in our budget for getting a big task off our plate, and also it really added to the house.
Yeah, they were gonna come out and do it in one day, professionally.
Start to finish.
Yeah, we didn't have to worry about any of it, so for only $1,500, we said yeah.
It was an absolute go.
After the gutters were done, we got around to putting the railing on the balcony and painting the garage, which were the last exterior projects we had. The total cost of finishing up the exterior projects was about $2,000.
That includes the gutters, the paint, all the additional little supplies that we needed to making sure that the outside was done.
So after finishing up all of the exterior projects, we were finally ready to move to the inside. And the first thing we knew we were gonna have to do was upgrade the electrical panel.
The breakers didn't work. Wiring was improper all throughout the house. And so we knew going into this project that the house wasn't safe, electrically speaking. There was knob and tube wires that were just tied into Romex wire, which if you know anything about electrical, that's a big no-no.
Yeah, knob and tube wiring is a really old style they used to use, which just, it's not up to our standards today. It's not as fire safe, it's not as shock proof as Romex wire, which is actually wrapped in the rubber.
Also, knob and tube is not rated for insulation, which because we wanted to do this house right, we wanted to make sure it was right all the way down to the core.
Yeah, and the original panel was a 100 amp panel. We upgraded it to a larger 200 amp panel so it could handle the electrical load that modern homes use. We actually had to replace the wire that runs from the panel all the way up to the pole because it was only rated for 100 amps. And so we had to change it out for one that was rated for 200 amps. So we went around and we plotted where our outlets would go, we plotted where our lights were gonna go, and we marked everything. We installed our new work boxes, and then we ran the wire through them, ran the wire to where our lights were gonna go, and the electrical was starting to come together.
One thing I personally underestimated, I've never had to rewire an entire house. And so this was a new project for me. And so I originally estimated, I was thinking, man, this whole house, it's probably about 1,000 feet of wire. Little did we know,
Yeah.
it was about what?
We used over 3,000 feet of wire in total.
3,000 feet of wire, lots and lots of wire. We ended up buying it in big 1,000-foot rolls, which saved us a ton of money. So when you deal with a big project like this, know that you're gonna use a lot of wire, and it's okay to not skimp on the wire, so that way when you're wiring in your outlets, you wanna make sure that you've got room to be able to actually get the outlet out and wire it in. It was a good lesson for me on that. All in all, the electrical cost us about $2,900. Getting heat turned on in this house was super important, especially since the water pipes in the basement there was water in the pipe. And so we wanted to make sure that that was gonna be protected from the elements. So we dove into getting the mechanicals taken care of right away before things got bad.
Yeah, so the first thing we tackled was the water heater. Then John busted out his HVAC skills and he installed a new furnace and AC unit. And upgrading these appliances was gonna go a long way towards making this home more energy efficient and just much more livable.
Also, it really makes the house attractive to the next homeowner.
Right, and we also had to run a little bit of new ductwork, but it wasn't too challenging. At this step, while we had the walls still torn out, we had to do a little bit of shoring up some of the internal load-bearing walls. So after we did that, we were able to run our ductwork, and then we could pass our building and our mechanical inspections.
One of the nice things that went in our favor is that I've been in the mechanical trades for a little bit, and so I had all the tools to really save us some money on this adventure. We ended up spending right about $4,000 getting the furnace and air conditioner installed, and it's not the top end, but it's also not the lowest quality furnace and air conditioner you could put in. Oh, and also water heater. Getting the furnace and air conditioning all taken care of, our house now has heat, which is really, really important in the wintertime when you're working with pipes that could freeze. And so we moved on to actually running the water pipes throughout the entire house. Also, at the same time, we replaced the drain pipe.
The drain pipe was old, it was cast iron, and it wasn't gonna be very easy to install all this new plumbing and tie it into that. So we figured, let's just cut it out and remove it and replace it with PVC, which is what we use in modern building, and it's just much easier to work with. The total cost for replacing the water lines was about $600. So after finishing the plumbing, we were ready to pass our rough mechanical inspection, our rough electrical inspection, our rough plumbing inspection. So getting all those out of the way felt really good.
Huge relief.
And the next project we were on to was insulating. So this house had no insulation, so adding that to it was gonna make a huge difference. Normally, in newer built houses, the studs are 2x6s, which allow the builders to cram more insulation into those wall cavities. But being an older house, we had 2x4 exterior studs, which meant we couldn't cram as much insulation in there. So we had to use R13.
Yeah, it made it a whole lot warmer in the wintertime. It was actually pretty fascinating to see the immediate change in temperature in each room after we insulated. I think it took us about 1 day, day and a half to insulate the entire house. One thing I do recommend when doing insulation is having a pneumatic stapler. That was a game changer for us. It took the stapling process of getting the insulation on the walls, it cut it in half. I mean, we originally were hammering it on with our hammer stapler that we used on the roof, and just having that pneumatic stapler, what a difference.
Also, we were able to buy in bulk. We bought the R13 for the walls, and then we bought R38 insulation for the attic. We were pretty happy to find that it was only gonna cost us $1,300.
After the insulation was complete, we're moved on to doing drywall, which, as crazy as it sounds, is probably one of my favorite pieces of the whole project. I don't know why, but I love mudding, taping, hanging up sheets of drywall because you start to see the whole project come together.
That does sound crazy, actually, yeah.
It is, I agree. We ended up phoning some friends. They came in and saved our backs and our arms, hanging the drywall on the ceiling. Without a lift, that would have been insane.
Yeah,
but just having additional hands, game changer.
And having the lift really helped too.
Oh,
because in total, we hung 168 sheets of drywall. And if you have to lift all of those yourself, good luck. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it really came together.
Drywall cost us about $2,000, but then we had to, of course, mud
and tape,
sand, all those other steps. John showed me this really cool trick when you're mudding. With the big long seams on the walls and ceilings, you can actually apply the mud using a paint roller instead of a mud knife, because we don't have any fancy mudding equipment.
Yeah.
And that little trick saved us a ton of time.
I think we used a grand total of 50 boxes of mud. We got really lucky when we went out to the store earlier on in the project. We found a mud that would have been $15 a box. We ended up finding it for $5. And the light bulb went off in my head. I think I looked at you and said, dude, we're buying 50 boxes. And you were like,
all right.
So we hustled these big old boxes into the basement to set them aside for later. But getting the drywall and the mud, doing it ourselves, we saved ourselves a lot of money. Typically for doing drywall in a house like this, I think we would have been spending roughly about 10 grand.
Yeah,
and
in total, we spent about $2,800 for all the materials.
Which is huge.
So after hanging up all the drywall, mudding, sanding, all of that, we were ready to move on to painting the interior.
This is where we got to break out the sprayer that we used outside once again. I think in total, it took us about 5 hours to paint this entire house with primer. And that's 2 coats, back rolling it to ensure that the texture was there and also that it all looked uniform. So all in all, I think we used, how many buckets of mud would you say?
Paint?
Yeah, or excuse me, paint.
All in all, we probably used 3 5-gallon buckets of primer.
Which isn't too bad for getting 2 coats of paint on this entire house. Now, once we got the primer on the house, we went through and we painted the entire house. White ceilings, we did the ceilings first, which made it so that way we could spray the ceilings and not have to worry about getting ceilings paint on the walls. So that's why we start top down.
And then we moved on to rolling on our wall colors. We couldn't use the sprayer because the overspray was gonna drift up onto the ceiling. So we knew it was gonna be what it was and we were just gonna have to roll it on.
But using an 18-inch roller really saved time and made it so it looked even across the entire house.
Painting the entire interior of the house cost us about $1,200.
Up to this point, we have not actually seen the wood floors, and we kind of said we want to be surprised.
We've been holding this house for 15 months and have only little glimpses of what we're actually looking at as far as what the floors look like underneath. And every little peek we've had has been very promising. And so we're gonna flip it around and show you kind of what we've been doing and kind of where we've been peeking. So this is gonna be a complete surprise to both of us as far as what the floor looks like underneath. It could even be very costly. So join us and let's see what it looks like.
So far, like, this is one little spot that we've torn up. So you can see we just ripped the carpet back. The rest of it's still tacked down. So we've seen little glimpses of the floor like this. We're not sure what the total picture looks like as far as the condition of the hardwood floors underneath this carpet. So we're about to tear up one whole room, and we're hoping, you're gonna see our real reaction, we're hoping that all of it looks good. So let's see what we got. We already cut the carpet, but we haven't ripped it back yet. Moment of truth.
Dang.
I say that's usable.
I'd say that's very usable.
I'd say we could work with this.
Hey, you wanna break that carpet and we'll just roll it up?
Yeah.
Dude, that's...
Not bad. There's a few rough spots so far, but
Let's go through and we're gonna tear up this and
roll it up.
we'll be back.
We really wanted to preserve the hardwood floors, but we weren't really sure how the whole process works, and we would rather have a professional come in and do it than us try to do it ourselves and kind of mess it up.
Potentially ruin it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we called someone in, and they came out, they gave us an estimate, and they were really knowledgeable, and they ended up doing most of the hardwood floor refinishing for us.
Yeah, that grand total came out to about $3,000 to refinish, sand, and seal the floors in the first floor and the second floor.
To this point, we had done some of the work in the full bathroom. We had already installed the tub and the shower walls, but now it was time to get back in there and finish it.
Yeah, so we dove in and laid LVP flooring. We liked the LVP that we laid so much that we decided to use it downstairs as well.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a dark gray stone tile, but it's not actually stone, which makes it look really good and makes it much easier to work with.
Also, much cheaper to install.
Yes, so we laid that for the flooring of our full bath. Then we installed our toilet, vanity, sink, countertop, light, all the other stuff, and it really came together. The total cost to finish up the full bathroom was about $1,400.
Having the upstairs bathroom finished, it allowed us to move on to the next project. We started with the trim on the stairs, going up the stairs. Thankfully, John had saved the old trim from when he tore off the walls going up. We would have put the original up, but the piece came out broken. And so we took that original piece, laid it on top of a new board, and we're able to trace out each step and transfer that over and onto the wall, making that project go way, way smoother.
After installing that stair trim, we went around and did some odds and ends, like installed our smoke and carbon monoxide detectors and our interior lights. And the total cost for this stuff was about $600.
All right, we've moved into the kitchen, and the kitchen presented some very unique challenges between the window layout and the chimney in the corner, and then also the fact that the kitchen's very small.
Yeah.
Much smaller than what we originally desired, but keeping the house true to its original form, we wanted to keep it the way it was. It took us a little bit of time to really tie everything together, and then also making it so that way the chimney was usable space inside the kitchen instead of wasting it.
Yeah, because the chimney ran right through the kitchen and we didn't demo it. So we just decided to encase it in our drywall but we couldn't just mount cabinets to just drywall. So then we had to kind of build a little bit out of it. That way we could attach cabinets to it safely and securely. And the other thing with the walls being uneven and the floor being uneven was we ended up having to use a lot of shims with our lower cabinets to make them even.
Yeah, that's kind of the nature of an old house.
After we had our lower cabinets installed, we did the flooring. So we ended up using the same luxury vinyl plank that we used in the full bath for the rest of the floor on the first story that wasn't our refinished hardwood floor.
Yeah, we started from the back of the house and moved to the front. We laid out our flooring in the way it was gonna make it so we didn't have to work backwards as much. One of the things I really loved about how we did the flooring was we didn't have transitions between the vinyl plank. We had only transitions between the wood floor and the vinyl plank, which made it so that way the room had nice smooth flows.
And the total cost for this was about $1,000. Next up, we were gonna do our interior window and door trim.
Yeah, so before we could really set the cabinets inside the kitchen, we had to get the trim done so that way everything would tie together. And so we started going around and actually making our own window casing, which we saved a lot of money doing it the way we did, which was getting sheets of plywood and ripping them down to the size that we needed for the windows. Not every window needed the same dimensions. And so we saved ourselves thousands of dollars by just making our own.
Yeah, and it added a few extra steps to the process because if you buy it already finished, obviously you really just cut it to size and then nail it in place. With this, we knew we were gonna have to sand it to make it nice and smooth, prime it and paint it to give it that nice glossy finish, but it was worth it in the end. And the total cost for trimming all of the interior was about $820. After all of our window and door trim was done, we went back to the kitchen to finish that up. We needed to know where the trim was going to fall. That way we knew where our countertop could go and our backsplash and our cabinets and our floating shelf. So having the trim done first was essential.
Absolutely. It made it so that way everything tied together inside the kitchen.
So we installed our upper cabinets, we installed our appliances, and then we installed a floating shelf. Part of the, again, unique challenges of this kitchen was that in one of the corners on the left side of the window, it was not built to the size that modern cabinets are built to. And rather than try to put some on the wall that were gonna create a dark, shadowy corner in the kitchen, we just decided an open floating shelf was much better.
It kept everything open, clean, and gave it a little bit of a natural color pop into the room.
We also installed all new stainless steel appliances. And this was gonna be a huge selling point for the house because kitchens are really what help it sell.
Yeah, the stainless steel really came into the color play that we were looking for, the clean, the simple look that we desired. And so having those appliances that were not only clean and modern, but also very functional inside the space.
The total cost for finishing up the kitchen was about $5,400.
Having the kitchen all finished up allowed us to move into the half bath. Now this was probably one of the tiniest rooms in this entire house.
It's a very small space.
When we first looked at this house, I went into the bathroom and sat on the toilet just to see what the space felt like sitting down. And my knees hit the vanity.
You had to open the door of the vanity so that your knee could sit all the way down.
That gives you kind of an idea of what space we were working with. And so we knew that we had to get a vanity that was small enough to fit in that space with the toilet where it was.
Yeah, we ended up using a round toilet bowl so that it saved us a little bit of that space and the smallest vanity we could possibly find.
So with a little bit of shopping and a little bit of ingenuity, we were able to find a vanity that worked for the space we were in. And so whenever you come across that, always know that there's some kind of option out there that is available. And we actually found it not too expensive.
Yeah, the best part about a project this small is it doesn't take as long and it doesn't cost as much. So we only spent about $370 to finish it. Finally, we spent about $1,500 to finish up a few more areas of the house. This included the back sunroom, the back staircase, and the attic.
Yeah, those are some pretty important areas to bring the house to its final completion stage. And I would say just having that attic taken care of and off the checklist really made it feel like this place was getting ready.
Yeah. We used paneling in the back sunroom to just go over the exterior wall that we had was just plywood. So we put the paneling on the wall and the ceiling, and it really just helped finish it up. And we used that same paneling as the risers on that back staircase. And since the back room was an add-on, there was actually an exterior window between that room and the dining room, which was kind of nice in that it allowed a lot of the natural light to come into the dining room. And we didn't want to lose that, but we also couldn't leave that window there. What we ended up doing was salvaging a window that was originally on the front of the house next to the front door. We took it out of that spot, and we really liked it because it's a unique
lead-lined glass window.
Yeah, it's a really unique piece.
Cool.
And we wanted to keep it, but it's not really functional to be a window that would be open to the elements. So instead, we moved it from where it was to in between the back sunroom and the dining room. That way, it would still allow that natural light to flood in and keep that accent piece. We also used the LVP to resurface the treads for the back staircase. They were just old yellow tile, and it looked really nasty, and it definitely needed to be upgraded. So we threw the LVP over those treads, and then we finished off the corners with rubber.
Yeah, the rubber made it so that way we didn't have to buy really expensive bull nose pieces that would have to go there to give you some traction. And so having those two pieces of the puzzle taken care of, the whole back staircase really came together and allowed it to be functional and also look consistent with the rest of the house. Now that the inside is completed, we were able to put a total cost together for what it cost us to get the inside done.
It came out to about $26,890.
That includes all of the appliances, the furnace, the air conditioner,
all of our electrical supplies, all of our plumbing supplies.
All in all, it came in right about where we imagined it was going to be when we walked through the house originally. It was a little bit more with electrical, but it was a needed expense that had to be made. For us, we wanted to walk away from this house knowing that we put our everything into it and that it was going to be a really great house for somebody.
Right, we were willing to spend more time and more money to make sure that everything was up to our standards.
We wanted to flip it good.
Adding up a few more expenses like our dumpster fees, landfill fees, a few more supplies and services, the total we spent to flip this house was $92,000.
That total number includes the purchase of the house, all of the materials that went into completing the projects needed to make the inside and outside where we wanted it to be to get the house ready for the market.
We listed it for $155,000. And after a few days on the market and getting a few different offers, we were able to make a deal, and we sold it for $165,000 with a total net just from the sale of about $150,000. And if you subtract out all of our expenses, our total profit came out to about $58,000.
Overall, this project took us about 18 months to complete. Now that was with me working a full-time job and only being here on some of the weekends.
Right, and he's the brains behind the operation, so during the week, I couldn't come out here and just rewire the house by myself. I needed his help for all that stuff.
Yeah, and so it made it so that way we could tag team and not get burnt out, which was really nice.
Overall, I think our first flip experience went pretty well, and we are living proof that you can actually do it. You can work a full-time job, buy a house and flip it, and it's a lot of fun and you'll learn a lot along the way.
Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment. Feel free to ask us any questions you have. Thank you guys so much for joining us on our episode of Flippin Good.
Yeah, it's our very first one, and we're so happy that you watched, and thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.
Take care.